Connectography, Mapping the Future of Global Civilization. He's also the author of Technocracy in America, Rise of the Infostate 2017, co-author of Hybrid Reality, Thriving in the Emerging Human Technology Civilization 2012. Parag was named one of Esquire's 75 most influential people of the 21st century and features in Wired magazine's Smart List. He holds a PhD from the London School of Economics and bachelor's and master's degree from School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University. He has traveled to over 150 countries and is a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. We are really, really fortunate and happy to have Parag here. Parag usually talks about a lot of stuff about a lot of countries, a lot of regions. And it is in our interest, we thought, to sort of provoke him and involve him in starting to think about India and write about India and bring India in his within his windscreen, so to say, so that even when he's not with us on occasions like this, he continues to sort of involve India in his global order thinking. Parag has already been with us on one earlier similar conclave, but I thought that in the current moment, after the last 2 years of pandemic, and his very, very thought-provoking book, Move, I felt it is extremely important for us in India to understand what is in store, how things are going to unfold. And since we are talking about India at 75, shaping India at 100, which is the next 25 years, I'm taking the liberty to even gaze a little more into the future, because Parag's scenario is 2020, 2070, 50 years, and it's mainly in the area of climate change. He basically talks about how climate change is going to affect the various geographies of the world, and with that, how human populations, ethnic groups, nations, what have you, will start moving and churning. And over the next 5 decades, what can we expect the world to look like? Within that, we have almost 1/6 of the world's population living in a very, very small geographic area called India, with boundaries of mountains and the sea, which makes us feel very secure and safe in our enclave. But, is it as safe as it looks? That's what I want to basically start discussing with Parag. Parag, without getting into any further, maybe anyway you can sort of have your own way to lace in whatever you have besides what I ask you. I'm going to basically start off with one question to you, Parag. You say in your latest book, with every 1 degree increase in temperature, 1 billion people will be uprooted. India will bear the brunt of the climate catastrophe like no other major nation, purely because of the population, and also the fact that India, in his estimate, in his wherever he's quoted it out of, shows India to be in one of the very, very badly hit climate zones of the future. And we have so much of population. And India is landlocked in the north, with impenetrable terrain. Historically, it has limited Indians to literally not able to go and search for better pastures, greener pastures. So aren't we staring at being locked up in an inhospitable compound? While you make a case that the future is brown, how really can 1 billion Indians aspire to live in conducive climate niches of the future? More so when the average Indian youth is much poorer than the global average on almost all respects. Over to you.
Thank you so much, MK. Greetings, everyone from Singapore. Wish that I could have been with you today, but I'm delighted to join in this conversation, and congratulations on this occasion and looking forward to the next 25 years. It's very much the topic that I would like to contribute to in this discussion. And indeed, we cannot have conversations today about the future of the world economy, about the future of governance, about the future of geopolitics, without taking climate change into account. I could have continued to write books about geopolitics and globalization, completely agnostic to climate effects. But as you know very well, climate change is laying bare our false hopes and false predictions about the trajectory for our economies and for many other areas where we have tried to be more confident because of its dramatic acceleration. Now, this is an appropriate time to be having this conversation also because of COP26. A lot of promises were made at the COP26 summit. And immediately after they were made, two things were pointed out. Number one, they are very far in the future, while people are already suffering today. And second of all, many countries are actually still lying, quite frankly, about their carbon accounting, so to speak. Just how much are they really reducing emissions? And the numbers that matter when you have a COP26 summit are financial commitments and technologies that are being deployed. But the only number that matters at the end of the day is the atmospheric concentration of carbon emissions. And that number is getting from bad to worse. And if we look at, indeed, the geographies where humankind has very comfortably settled, it has been between 20 and 30 degrees north latitude. Or you could even go down to the equator and 10 degrees. But basically between 0 and 30 degrees latitude is where the vast majority of the human population is concentrated. But if you look at this map, for example, this map is showing you what the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, this is their forecast for what happens to the shifting suitability for human habitation of the world as temperatures rise. Places in red become less suitable, places in green become more suitable. Now, before talking about India, let me make a statement about what a profoundly ironic, violently ironic picture this presents. As you may know, MK, the world population is reaching a plateau. You know, India's population is large, China's population is large, but in North America, in Europe, in Russia, in Japan, populations are already shrinking. We have effectively reached the peak humanity, as I call it. The largest number of people that will ever live, ever, are basically alive today. And look at the places that are green, the places that are becoming more livable and more habitable over time, where it's even getting better due to climate change, have fewer and fewer and fewer people. And the places that are turning red, like India, like the Gulf countries, like much of Africa, like much of South America, have the most people. MK, there is not a greater irony on the planet Earth today. Not even the profound and grotesque inequality of the world's economy. There is nothing as perverse as this fact. And this will hit home. This will hit home every single day for the rest of our lives, everyone in this room, everyone watching. Every day, people in the world are suffering from the effects of this fact. So now let's talk about India, because we have a very particular, peculiar geography as the subcontinent, surrounded by water, hemmed in by the Himalayas, one of the few remaining populations that is still growing, a very young demographic, one of the youngest countries in the world, and yet look at the color that is emerging here, due to, of course, some places stricken by drought, falling water tables. We know some cities have had the zero-day events, such as Chennai, where the groundwater has run out, where the water supply has run out, flooding in parts of the country as well, and so forth. So there is no more important investment that a country can be making for the sake of its own human capital, its own demographic health, than in environmental sustainability. And the answer is not going to come from COP26. The solution is not going to come from Joe Biden, right? The solution is not going to come from Xi Jinping, right? India has to have its own solutions. Every region of the world is a microclimate. Of course, you cannot control what China will do in terms of coal power plants, right? You cannot control OPEC oil production. All you can do is to try to shore up and reinforce your microclimate as India. What can we do in India to desalinate more water, to have more efficient irrigation, to use much more solar power, to have more drought-resistant seeds? On and on and on. The list of possible interventions, technological, social, environmental, to help to prolong the pathway to this fate. We can do those things. India is doing those things. But can you do it fast enough? And the answer is no. You could never invest what it will take, meaning you should be motivated to do more, and more. This is it. This is priority number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Thanks, Parag. Okay, so that brings me to the second question. Now let us assume a situation. I mean, let's just fast forward in the next 20 years or 30 years. By 2047, India at 100. The climate is worse than what it is right now. And you people in Delhi, I'm from Bombay, and last 2 days I'm finding it difficult in the evening to sort of breathe properly. Now, in 20 years or 25 years, you're going to have things getting even worse. You're going to have water running out in certain cities in the peninsula. You have now cyclones, which are a common occurrence every year on the western coast. Himalayas and the glaciers are almost waiting there to sort of start behaving differently from what it is. At that time, in his book, he talks about mitigation strategies and adaptation strategies. Mitigation strategies is about how to reduce these changes that are happening. What are the behavioral changes that we need to do to ensure that climate change is slowed down or reduced or stopped. Adaptation is what is most likely, because this mitigation is not really going to take everybody together, because everybody's motivation is not the same. If you see his map that he showed there, most of the people who are decision makers in the world today at the global order are already living in places which are going to not be under any great, in fact, large parts of Siberia and Canada are going to become more livable and more habitable than what they are currently. So therefore, I think adaptation strategy is what is going to be the order of the day. In that, I have two questions to ask him. One is about, for all those people who can get out of here, obviously, there are the grades of people who can and cannot. India, even now, is a net exporter of people over the last 100, 150 years. Our population and geography demands us to work towards more conducive arrangements for Indians to travel and working abroad. I mean, right now, Parag himself is not able to come to India to attend this, because if he has to come here and go back, he has to be in quarantine for 2 weeks in Singapore. Now, travel arrangements between India and many other places is probably the worst. We are amongst the lowest order passport in the world. So what would you suggest, Parag, should be India's approach to the formation and development of a global migration policy? Is there a global migration policy that is being thought of or even discussed? Or should we start discussing it?
Great question, MK. So here's the bad news. There has never been, and there will never be, a global migration accord. I promise you that the governments of the world will actually agree on a common approach to colonizing the moon and colonizing Mars. And even after that, MK, there will still not be a global migration accord for Earth, because international diplomacy, intergovernmental organizations are premised on national sovereignty. And the one vestige left of sovereignty for all countries, rich, poor, north, south, is the control or the flow of people across their borders. We can no longer control pollution. We can no longer control cyber hacks. We can no longer control viruses coming across our borders. But every last country in the world seeks to control the movement of people. And so we will never have a migration accord. Now, the question then becomes, what about Indians, right? Now, we're a large population. India needs to be thought of in a segmented way. There are those global Indians, and India's diaspora is the second largest in the world, behind China's. I do predict that the skilled and unskilled, semi-skilled labor of India will have growing opportunities to spread around the world. The rich world has acute labor shortages, shortages of doctors, shortages of IT professionals, shortages of farmers even. Russia would like to import Indian farmers. Kazakhstan is importing Indian construction workers. Europe, especially Germany, is importing Indian IT workers. 96,000 Indians moved to Canada in the year 2019. So skilled and semi-skilled Indians you're finding everywhere, and I do predict the Indian diaspora will absolutely be the largest in the world, no question, within the time of India 100. There's no question whatsoever, because China is aging, its population is shrinking, there is suspicion of China everywhere, Chinese are even going home. Meanwhile, India is young, India's population will be larger, Indians are welcome everywhere, Indians can learn English and assimilate, Indians have studied IT and nursing and medicine. Exactly the things that countries desperately need, Indians provide. So the mismatch and the correction of that mismatch will amount, MK, to easily tens of millions of people. So hopefully that means talented and some semi-skilled Indians will go abroad, will hopefully share their remittances in a two-way street and continue to contribute to India even as they are abroad. India is in that sense one of the few countries that can actually spare labor. And one of the things I think you'll find it humorous, in the book I talk about the reverse Mughal Empire. 500 years ago, it was the Mughals coming north to south. In the 21st century, it's Indians moving south to north. And every time I travel to a place like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, I always see so many more Indians. It's remarkable how they're just organically showing up there in the labor markets. But let's talk about the Indians in India and adaptation, right? Adaptation, the crucial thing. You mentioned the cyclones in Western India. Now, some countries are already building seawalls and sea barriers. But India would have to ask, where? Look at this enormous coastline, one of the longest coastlines of any country in the world. Where exactly should we be building? Which cities? So many, major cities that need to be protected. Mumbai, Chennai, and others. That's tens of billions of dollars, MK, just to deploy a technology that may not work. It may not work. It's not working in Venice, I'll tell you that much, and they've spent billions of dollars. Or we can think proactively. Should we be relocating people? Should we be building cities more inland and at higher elevation? Should we be doing more sustainable housing, more rainwater collection, more wastewater treatment, right? More, again, resilient agriculture, all of these things. Should we be focusing on places or focusing on people? And smart countries know that the things, the infrastructure, that's a commodity, right? That can be done at ever lower cost in an ever more sustainable and even movable fashion. But people, we have to invest in people. Investing in people means helping to relocate people to climate resilient, climate stable geographies. There is infrastructure that I would invest in, of course, in a big picture way. And that is, of course, channeling Himalayan water. We will have more and more glacial melt. If you look at the major mountain systems, mountain ranges of the world, the Andes in South America, the Alps in Europe, the Himalaya, and so forth, only right now do the Alpine countries, the rich Alpine countries, Germany, Italy, France, Switzerland, Austria, they are already committing the capital, the resources to the engineering projects that would store and divert and harness this water, channeling into aquifers so that the flooding doesn't destroy people's homes, it doesn't wipe out the cropland. So that's the kind of infrastructure we need. Very smart, water-oriented, circulating these resources and circulating people. That's ultimately what is going to be a source of resilience in these difficult climatological conditions that lie ahead.
Thanks. That actually covers my third point that I was going to say, because you said, in the book, you made a very compelling argument that humanity needs to start retooling and, retrofitting the world for its 4.5 billion youth. And I think about 1/4 of those youth are going to be here. And India does need to worry about the future a lot more than a lot of other countries have to, and also relook at its own geography, understand what to do with the Himalayas. Only one good thing that I saw from your map, is the Northeast, which always looks like something that is, a little out of our general conversations, which now in the last 5 years, I think there has been more of integration of that. The Northeast looks like one of the parts which is going to be a climate suitable and climate suitable niche part of India, which is good news. We think that that means that a lot of our future big cities could be around Guwahati and so on.
Well, let me just make one point about that, which is, if you take this map on faith, and of course, this is produced by science. There is no political agenda in this map. You do have to appreciate the shifting demographic balance of power around the world, because of course, if countries realize that they should absorb people at a time of this demographic deflation, they should be competing actively for youth, especially Asian youth, as you said. In fact, the future of the human species, MK, can be summed up in 2 words: